Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Raniora taku ingoa, ko Māmari te waka, ko Ngāpui te rāroa, me te apauringa iwi. Today I'm sharing a bit about my rangahau plan or my Hauora plan, supporting Māori and Pākehā tāne that are struggling with mental health, specifically depression. I will cover the approach of my rangahau research with my target whānau as mentioned, the kaupapa and issue identified in my Aramatuai 3.2. I will talk about changes made to my plan based on the feedback from my whānau, team lead and kāko. I will discuss how I look to improve or remedy any feedback around my rangahau in preparation for finalising my Hauora plan for implementation. So I'm just going to talk to my target audience. I've kind of mentioned it already in my introduction. And then the challenges and the kaupapa of the rangahau. So my target obviously is Māori and Pākehā tāne that present with mental health, specifically depression. The number of participants that I'm going to implement this rangahau or research plan with is about 3 to 5 participants, 3 to 5 tāne, and utilising their journey around healthcare and how it's been for them journeying with depression. So the purpose is to make it culturally safe for tāne to share their voice, where they may be experiencing depression and knowing their rangatiratanga, their choice, autonomy and self-leadership remains theirs and their mana stays intact. So creating culturally safe spaces for mana around voice and choice. The challenge or the issue is important because for tāne, it's a tough and vulnerable exercise to talk about their emotions or depression, let alone having to speak to, for example, a Pākehā doctor that may be lacking cultural considerations or understanding of mātauranga Māori methods of healing. This is important because our tāne are suffering in silence due to not finding culturally safe spaces to voice their emotions around depression and dark spaces. I just want to talk to the illustrations as well. I've picked them intentionally. The night to day, and then the tāne standing on a cliff face, looking out into the night sky, in that dark space. And some of the methods, mātauranga methods that I'm going to touch on, or the principles, like whanaungatanga, are going to resolve some of these things. Him being on his own, him being isolated, I want to utilise Māori methods and ways of being in care as options for our tāne to be readily available so that they can utilise them so they're not in these spaces. So feedback from whānau. This is the consent form. So firstly, I spoke with my team lead, and in speaking to her, I was getting consent and insight around my rangahau research before progressing to the next stage of engaging with potential participants. The main thing that came back from my team lead was ensuring that I explained the consent forms effectively with whānau, that they would know it is all confidential and solely for the purposes of study and assessment. Additionally, when they sign, explaining where any information or data collected would go. Again, being client notes on our Access database, which they have access to, and then solely for the assessment space. Secondly, I spoke to some whānau, and in speaking to whānau about this rangahau research around depression, I was getting a feel around what they might think. I shared with them how the one-on-one interviews and kōrero that I was looking to implement was to assess the experience whānau have had with care on their journey, and that it would be a tool to draw out insights that could allow whānau to share how their care journey could be improved with depression. Lastly, I had a talk with my kāoko, or in a kaitiakitanga session. In kōrero, I had some feedback around my questions that I would be utilising with my one-on-one interviews with whānau, ensuring that my opening questions laid a foundation for whānau, what their understanding may be of depression and cultural safety, ensuring that I'm not assuming the knowledge, that they have knowledge of these concepts, but also in leading into questions around voice and choice, that it is a part of their rangatiratanga or their perspective that our whānau have. Again, that this rangahau be a tool that would bring improvements to their care, to the tāne's care in the health system surrounding presenting or reaching out for help and support in the health system. I also want to talk about impacting factors to the lack of cultural safety. So there was 3 layers of racism theory that Jones and 08 mentioned, and that'll be in our reference section. This is institutionalized racism, personally mediated racism, and internalized racism, where they're used to analyze the data for experiences of racism in the health system and for Tāne. So institutional racism is being excluded and devalued by the health system. Mental health stigmatization leads to depression. Personally mediated racism, experiencing racial profiling or stereotyping, as mentioned in the impacts on whānau voice. And internalized racism, internalized shame and unworthiness to receive care, this whakamā around these forms of racism causing a deterrent and presenting for care. So 3 factors are operating here against Tāne. When presenting around depression, 1, the health system and how Tāne are treated or seen, stigmas or preconceived ideas in the health system. 2, racial profiling that are another barrier to getting help. And thirdly, the internal thoughts that Tāne may carry themselves of shame. It's not manly to ask for help. And having these 3 layers of racism theory, as Jones puts, it's standing in the way of their health care. If Tāne are experiencing depression, it's not their job to articulate what cultural safety should look like and Māori ways of knowing, being and doing to their doctors to receive that as part of healthcare. Rather, Tāne choices should be empowered with the options of Mātauranga Māori healing methodologies being outlined as a choice in the current NZ health system. So originally, the plan was to organically connect with Tāne and create culturally safe spaces for Tāne to engage into receive the support they need with depression. But the changes I made was I realised I didn't specifically outline one-on-one engagements as opposed to in a group setting. So that's going to be my approach. And so I've got questions that I want to utilise as leading questions to unpack this rangahau with whānau. As mentioned, it will keep it organic and natural, culturally safe, and not clinical and cold. And so improvements I want to make around this. Improvements actually that have come out of this space. This particular rangahau has inspired the creation of culturally safe spaces for Māori and Pākehā Tāne that may not otherwise come in to connect. So I've recently started a Tāne space that is flexible for our guys to come to, and we had coffee kōrero catch up and a surf casting fishing hang down at Kaitonakat. There's about 6 or 7 of us. So why has this been helpful? This hasn't been my, as I've shared, my approach has changed where it's going to be one-on-one. But the reason why this space has been helpful is, perfect example, one of our guys rang me the night before on Wednesday, and he was struggling with being in a dark spot and needed to have a kōrero to encourage him and bring a bit of hope to a situation. So following this, he was a bit whakamā to connect after the next day. But I told him we would be fishing at the cut in the Aro as another option for him to come along to that. So so he come along for 2 hours, but I didn't hear from him all day. And so I think that flexibility really gave him an opportunity to come into a safe space where there wasn't too much pressure. And he shared when he got there that he was ashamed for reaching out for help. And I just said to him, bro, don't be. It's something we as men need to do more. And just really encouraged him that he did the right thing. And so when he left there, he just said, man, thanks heaps for being there and to talk to, and thanks heaps for the space and day. And so I just checked where he was going from there, and he was going to hang out with cousins down in Whakatane and that. But it opened up a space for him to be able to be able to connect into. So framework, I think I've touched on a bit. already. And so one's marae tikanga, utilising whai kōrero or the metaphorical domain. And so I want to share again that man on the cliff standing alone in the dark space, and then how we can use whanaungatanga, whakapapa, he kanohi katea, kia tūpato, rangatiratanga, how we can use all of these concepts. In whanaungatanga, he's no longer on the cliff by himself, but the bro was surrounded at a fishing space with men that he could connect with. And kia tūpato, it required me to tread lightly, to be careful in these spaces with them. So these are concepts that I'm going to be using as I engage into this rangahau research. And he kanohi katea, having a familiar face to talk to, and to have that open relationship there. And then yeah, coming back to rangatiratanga, these are all a progressional space, having leadership over their own lives and over their own decisions, building that again. So that's the approach. Just to conclude, I've covered my Raniora Hauora plan and the kaupapa of this, of that plan, the challenges and why voice and choice is important to explore for our tāne experiencing depression, and I've covered solutions and solutions and changes that that I'm looking to implement in this plan for engagement with tāne. I think key takeaways: looking at starting from night to day, to the man on the cliff, to the light at the end of the tunnel. I want this space to be that for tāne. I want this rangahau research to create that in cultural safety, that they know that they can come to the light at the end of the tunnel, and that there's whanaungatanga, rangatiratanga, a carefulness with their rangahau and with their pūrākau, and their stories, and just a place where they can land and connect with safely, that is mana enhancing and ensures that their voice and choice is respected and heard. Kia ora.